In this video, we are going to cover a very important topic, and that is routing. So typically with React, you either are going to use one of two main libraries, at least the majority of React projects will. You're either going to use React Router or you're going to use Reach Router. They both are different libraries that essentially tackle the same topic, which is how do you determine based off the URL, i.e. the navigation on a website, what pages to render. Remember, in React, everything is a component. So you want to think about pages the same way. So let's look at a visual example. So at a high level, we understand what these libraries are doing. Because while these libraries are different and they'll go through iterations and they'll go through different versions, essentially they're trying to achieve the same thing. And as long as you're able to understand the high level topic, what the actual implementation details are is largely not that important. So imagine that you had your browser. Inside your browser, you have your website, your URL. URL-based navigation is pretty much the standard way that we navigate throughout a website. Let's say on this website, when you land on your homepage, you have some component like a navigation bar. Those little black lines, imagine that those are different links that take you to different routes on this website. Let's say that you selected the first website and it takes you to, let's just say Crown Clothing and then /route 1. When you navigate here, we might expect a specific page to render. What we'll notice though, is that that page is an entire component. I want you to think about it like that. Imagine that entire page that just got rendered when we navigated to Route 1 is a brand new component that we mount onto the page in response to navigating to Route 1. Now, what I want you to notice though is that the navigation bar component is still there. I've graded out a little so you can see and highlight which link we're currently on. But if you think about a lot of our applications, we know that in many applications, regardless of where you navigate onto the page, there are certain components that are always there, particularly navigation bars, side panels, all of those are always present. And the libraries that we use, whether it be React Router or Reach Router, should allow us that functionality. We should be able to modify and change what lives on the page based on the route. And what's changing is going to be what components render and don't render. So in our particular case with the navigation bar, most of the time, we probably always want it there. So there's a composition here that's important to think about because it really extends into how you would intuitively build applications. So we know we have a navigation bar. The content below the navigation bar is the one that typically changes on the route change. So here we see at Route 1, we've rendered in this different component at the bottom that reflects a page. Now let's say instead we navigate to Route 2, the second link. Here, what should happen is that we should render in some new content as we expect. On the side here, I want you to notice that there is now this sidebar. This sidebar might be some kind of navigation for the content within this route, meaning that depending on what you select inside of this side navigation, it may also additionally determine what gets rendered on the content to the right. So this you can imagine as a subroute within a main route that we're nesting in. This is a very common pattern that you see in web applications as well. Some things like Facebook Messenger chat is a good example of this. Depending on what you choose, the content on the right will render a different conversation. So similarly here, let's imagine that we selected the first link. We might render some specific things inside of here. If you look at the URL, you'll notice that now we're saying Route 2 /sub-route 1, meaning that we're in the first subroute of Route 2, which is indicated by that first link that we've clicked in our sidebar. So the right content reflects accordingly because the right content is the components that are being rendered regarding this route. Now let's say, for example, we chose a different route, sub-route 2 inside of our sidebar navigation. Here, of course, we expect the content inside to change again. So what I'm hoping that these diagrams have shown you is a very common pattern that we see throughout different web applications. We know that depending on the routes that we navigate to, certain parts of the page may change. Certain parts may not, such as navigation bars. within the parts of the pages that are changing as we move throughout the application by routing to different links, there may be certain routes that have components that stay with deeper subroutes. So in those subroutes, an even smaller portion of that website is re-rendering and coming in with new components and showing new content. But as we've seen here with our side navigation bar nested in Route 2, that component may also stay as long as you're nesting in Route 2 and navigating through these nested subroutes inside of Route 2. Now, once again, perhaps if we were to change the main route, let's say we went to Route 3, in this particular case, of course, everything underneath the main navigation bar re-renders, and that is expected behavior based on what we've been discussing so far. So again, this is a very common pattern that you see in how websites are built throughout probably the majority of the web applications you use on your day-to-day. We just want to be able to replicate this behavior with routing inside of our own application. In this particular app, we're going to be using React Router. So in the next video, let's learn how to implement the newest version of React Router inside of our application. I'll see you in the next video.